Okay, welcome everyone to ACDE number 208. We have a lot on the agenda today. We'll talk about Pectra, how the fork went on Hudi, some process upgrades with regards to how we deploy hard forks, and then we'll see if we're comfortable talking about mainnet timing. Then what I expect will take most of the call, Fusaka. So we have some updates on PeerDAS, and then lots to discuss about the EOF. Hopefully we can come to a final resolution about EOF shape and size and inclusion today. And then there was also some other minor Fusaka EIPs that client teams brought up. And if we have time, there are a few portal network and history expiry topics to also cover at the end of the call. But to get us started, Perry, do you want to give an update on how the Hudi fork activation went?
Yeah, so the Hudi Pectra fork happened yesterday, almost roughly at this time. And immediately after, there was a relatively stable participation rate. We finalized without any unexpected problems. There were two issues that were noted, relatively minor and non-critical ones. One seems to be related to Kaplan Aragon validators. And the second one was higher than expected resource use on Lighthouse during the transition, which has since been fine. The Lighthouse team also found another issue for which they had a bug fix released last night in the form of the beta 5 release. We haven't yet finished all of our validator state testing, purely because the queue is relatively large as it's an open validator set. So that might still take a few more days for us to have all the results on consolidations, manually triggered withdrawals, and so on. But so far, everything looks to be going as expected. Yeah, I think that's most of what we have to report at this moment. More coming up.
Thank you. And then the other big part of Pectra testing on Hudi was application and infrastructure. Lido posted an update in the chat. It seems like the fork has gone smoothly on their end. I don't know if there's anyone from the team. Yeah, I see Ivan is here. Do you want to give a quick update from Lido's side?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have successfully passed the hard fork with 14 node operators, and all 4 staking modules worked well. In simple DVD, we had both OBOL and SSV clusters running, and also the community staking module as well. All our oracles worked well. We got all the reports. This morning, we also got the report for the community staking module. It went smoothly. And we have confirmed that all the compatibility upgrades that we included in our side of the Pectra hard fork are also functioning well and correctly. The only note here is that we haven't tested the actual new functionality in Pectra, like triggerable exits, consolidations, and features related to max effective balance. That will come later. But so far, the upgrade is looking good. And besides those small issues with Aragon and Lighthouse that affected some of the node operators, we are pretty happy with the upgrade. And big shout out to all the client teams. I think you've done a fantastic job here.
Thank you. And then I also saw in the agenda comments, EtherFi said they plan on starting to test, but it's dependent on EigenLayer, and I believe EigenLayer was dependent on Gnosis Safe deploying their contracts on Hudi. I don't know if Matt from Eigen is on the call today. Okay, maybe not. Okay, and then Perry says Gnosis Live is live on Hudi now. So nice, that's good news. It seems like, yeah, it was blocked. It was kind of this chain of blocking where yeah, a lot of contracts depend on Safe, and then EigenLayer also has a lot of like restaking protocols on top of it. So generally it seems like things are going well. on the application layer testing. Like we discussed last time, we probably want to wait at least a few more weeks to give people plenty of time to test. And I think related to this, in general, figuring out how we want to approach mainnet deployment is quite important. And Frederick from the EF security team has put together a doc to discuss this. Yeah, Frederick, do you want to share your doc?
Yeah, sure. I can share my screen quickly. I am not going to go through all of this, considering that we don't have that much time. I can also, maybe you can share the link if you have it.
Yeah, I put it in the chat already.
Okay, good. Yeah. So basically, what this document is an attempt to try and formalize the upgrade process that takes place during hard forks. Most of this are things that is already being done today, and it's merely a way of formalizing it and ensuring that we do the same each time and we don't miss a particular step. The main difference, I would say, is something that's part of the end here, which is some incident response plan, where ahead of the hard fork, we assign roles to some people, and these people then have various responsibilities to ensure that things are getting done. For example, that verification of the hard fork is taking place. It can be that communication is going out. If there's an incident, that we have the right people working to solve that incident as quickly as possible. And it also adds a few other things, like instead of just waiting for finalization and calling that a success, there should be some verification of the EIPs, for example, to ensure that they're actually working on the testnet and on mainnet before success is called. There are some templates that can be used for the upgrades. Basically, the idea would be that for the, let's say we're upgrading Oleski again, then we would fill this out, so we have a record of that. We would have some information about where people can find updates and where they can communicate. The status update, for example, might just be a HackMD page where updates are posted, or maybe at some point some kind of fancy plates. We also have some verification of what should be verified after the upgrade has gone through. And then perhaps the most like one of the, I guess, contentious or controversial points to discuss would be the timelines that are listed in this document. Basically, what it says right now is that there should at least be 14 days apart between each testnet. Testnets should not be scheduled at the same time, but it says should, so they can. There is some reasoning why that should not be the case. And it also states that there is this kind of wait, or I guess review period between clients having their releases out and the first testnet being upgraded, which in this document is 30 days. The reasoning here is that during these 30 days, we can run bug bounty competitions, we can have the bug bounty program active, we can have the protocol security team review the clients as they are ready, as well as external auditors if we need to. But this, of course, adds a bit of extra time between clients being ready and the upgrades being live on mainnet. So I don't know if that's something we should discuss in this call, Tim, or if people should leave comments on the PR, perhaps. But
yeah, so I think for sure the specifics around like testnet deployments and whatnot will require bike shedding, and we can save ourselves this from the call. People should comment about this on the PR, or if we merge this and people want to change it, they can open another PR. I think the most important part with regards to Pectra is one, the idea of like assigning people from different teams to be on call when the upgrade happens, and having that set in advance so that we kind of know who to ping, and that the people who will be pinged or may be pinged know to be on alert. And I think the idea would be that team sets somebody if for whatever reason that person cannot make it, there's like a backup, or if we thought this was going to take 2 hours and it ends up taking 3 days, the team can obviously rotate who is on, but to always have kind of a source of truth of, okay, this is the person who's owning things for Prism or Nimbus or Aragon or whatever, and having set that in advance. And I also think the other big part is, before we kind of close things off and say that Pectra is live, having a set of things we want to actually test for the upgrade and see happen beyond just finality feels like it would be important. So does anyone disagree with like those two parts, that A, we should schedule specific people from different teams, and then B, that we should try to identify like what are the things we want to see before we complete the upgrade?
And also maybe if there are some voices that feel very strongly that we should not have this type of process.
Right. No process at all.
Yeah, but I have talked with all the client teams, and they have provided a lot of super valuable information. Yeah, I hope there won't be any big major issues.
Nico?
Just a question. Should this be a meta EIP, or should this remain like a process?
No, I would put it in the PM repo, because
okay.
we want to keep changing it for forever, and meta EIPs are hard to do that way.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. And then Lukash has a comment saying like, don't we already do this? This is just writing this down. And yes, and I think to take Lukash as an example, if he is the person on call for Nethermind, it's helpful for other people to know that he is the person on call for Nethermind, even if that was already the case. Because clearly this kind of happened with the Holeshki issue, where it wasn't clear like who should take the lead and like who should pay who. So I think to the extent we can make this clearer, it's valuable. So okay, it seems like there's a lot of support for it. We should probably merge this in the next couple of days. Again, we can debate the specifics around like the testnet delays and whatnot, either on this PR or in a follow-up PR. But I think using a minimal version of it and trying this for Pectra on mainnet seems reasonable. The other process change with regards to deploying hard forks was this idea of ETH config as a JSON RPC API. So to give some context on this, part of the reason why we had these bugs on Sepolia and Holeshki is that they had different configurations than Mainnet does with regards to the deposit contract. And so the idea here is that we could have a JSON RPC endpoint that nodes can use to check that they actually have the same parameterization for the upgrade. Dano was the author on this. Dano, do you want to give quick context?
Sure. So I've drafted up an EIP for this 7910. It's basically a RPC that returns from the current operation what the configuration is. And I want to get this in team members in client teams' minds right now. I don't expect movement on this for a few months, but just to make sure that we have everything that we need to work with. A couple of high-level design things is I don't just want people to report the text of their configuration file, because that may not be what got reflected into their system. So this proof of concept I built for Besu pulls it entirely from the runtime configuration. And I tried to put in this configuration object things that we know have caused deviations or consensus failures from the configuration. Broken code, can't report on that. But if we forgot to set the system contract, if we have the wrong set of precompiles, which has broken some testnet activations, contract ID getting wrong. No one's gotten the blob schedule wrong yet, but that's the sort of thing that would break it that's a configuration item, or if they activate at the same time. So this would just be a JSON RPC that you would say, give me your ETH config, and then we'll return what your current configuration is. And this is off of an old Hootie from Besu pre-fork. And this is what we're currently running, and a little quick comparison hash. This is what we plan on running next, if next is set. And if next is not set, next and next hash are null. So this gives us an idea before the fork if we're configured properly, and teams can look at this API and compare things. Now, if everyone's got everything exactly the same, through canonicalization rules, the hash is going to be identical. So that can be a quick check. And if that's different, then they can go to what made up that hash and do a diff and see where things differ. So that's basically the high-level overview of how this is meant to work. So what I would like from teams is to go to the discussion link and give me feedback, what they think should be added, what they think should be removed, if they think the design should be different. Feedback is what I'm looking for right now. I don't think it's ready to commit to final review. I think we need other client teams to give feedback.
Okay, yeah, before we debate REST versus JSON RPC, I guess, yeah, does anyone feel like we should push to have a version of this for Pectra, so like teams implementing it in the next week or so, or are we fine delaying this for Amsterdam?
I feel like it's not something that requires like any kind of fork scheduling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I meant Fusaka, not Amsterdam. Sorry about that. But more like, given we had config issues with Pectra on testnets, will we feel more confident if we have this before Pectra on mainnet, or are we fine quadruple checking the configs without this?
So my sorry to just speak, but I guess anyone else can also. From my point of view, this thing is interesting, but at the same time, I do feel like some more work is needed on this to really bring it to the finish, and especially since like the config model that it assumes is not something that actually, for example, in Geth it doesn't exist like this. We don't actually have like a current and next configuration. We just have like a list of blocks and timestamps when the fork is supposed to activate. So we actually have to write some new code to generate this response. And then I guess, yeah, well, I mean, that code will be really well tested, but is that going to mean that everything is correct? I don't know. Like it's just something where I personally would have been much happier just seeing kind of an endpoint that reports the current sort of like list of fork block numbers and timestamps, because I feel that is something that is kind of missing. And I mean, yeah, the parameters as well, like they are important, and the ones that we got wrong on the testnet obviously should be included, but no, I mean.
Okay. This is the feedback I'm looking for in the discussion, but we didn't fail on getting the fork number wrong. We failed on getting the config wrong. So that's why I focused on more than that. We have the fork number in the dev P2P stuff with the fork IDs. We have that already in process and working well, I think.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we will have more discussions about this. I do think it's a cool proposal. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that like for us specifically, it doesn't seem like the most useful thing, but we would still implement it, of course. Like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's early enough that I'm very open to counter proposals. The discussion topic would be the best place for that.
Yeah, and from the chat, it seems like there's moderate support, at least to have it over Fusaka, but yeah, not something we'll need for Pectra, so we can continue discussing it and then obviously manually review the configs on the clients for Pectra. Yeah, anything else on this topic? Okay, thanks, Daniel. Next up, mainnet timing. So Hoodie has forked. It's gone relatively well. It seems like testing is underway for staking services and other applications. Do we want to set a fork date today? Do we want to wait another week or two to do this? And then Andrew has proposed a set of dates. Given we said like we wanted at least 30 days between the Hoodie activation and the mainnet fork, the first proposed date is April 30th, and then he's proposed some pretty much on a rolling basis after that we could use. Yeah, do people have a strong preference around trying to set a date today or waiting another week or two? Yeah. Okay, we have some preference towards setting a date. The first is April 30th, which I think is also the slot Barnabas put out there. Does anyone think April 30th would be too soon? And the expectation there is, I think if we want to have the fork on April 30th, it would be nice to have the blog post out with all the releases at least like a good 2 weeks before that. So April 30th is a Wednesday. So this means that client releases should be out somewhere between like April 10 and April 14. Does that give people sufficient time to put out a mainnet release?
Yeah, I'll just jump in quickly. From Lido's side, we are going to be ready. We think it's pretty reasonable. We're finishing all the tests, and I think this date will work. However, I just want to flag that I've noticed in the discussion thread on GitHub PM that EtherFi are not yet started, and they depend on EigenLayer that was also depending on Save and some other things. And they commented that they might need time until the end of May. I'm not sure if someone from EtherFi is on the call. I just wanted to highlight that it might be a challenge.
Right, thanks. Is anyone from EtherFi on the call? Okay, there isn't. So I guess if we just stick to client teams, is there any client team for whom like having a release out mid-April would be problematic? If not, what I think we could maybe do is set a tentative date today, verify with EtherFi and other applications over the next week, and then confirm this on the CL call. But yeah, is there any team that today feels like getting your release out by April like 14 would be problematic for them, and that they would want to push back even beyond that? Okay, then if people feel generally okay with that, what I would do is I'll open a PR on the PM repo with this slot that which is slot 115999872. And then the client team should also assign, like we just said, assign different people to like actually watch the fork. So my hope is that by next Awkward Devs next Thursday, we have this filled out. We've heard from any applications that have like a major issue with that date, and we can make a final call. But I think we can at least get the ball rolling on tentatively scheduling the date, figuring out who from each team is going to be it's going to be like assigned to monitor the fork, and then yeah, follow up with applications. That seem reasonable? Any objections? Okay, let's do that. Great. So again, that would be on April 30th, epoch 362496. Okay, moving on to Fusaka. So our deadline for people to propose EIPs was this week. There's been many proposed EIPs. There were 2 that I couldn't merge for some random bot reasons, so I posted them in the agenda. And then our deadline for teams to share their perspectives about the fork was next week. So hopefully, if we sort out EOF right after this, teams can take some time in the next week or so to share their preferences, and then we can finalize the scope for the fork by April 10th, so by all core devs 2 weeks from now, which is what we originally were aiming for. So please, please review the list of PFI EIPs if you haven't already. And now, main thing in Fusaka is PeerDAS. I believe Sunnyside Labs has an update on the work they've been doing on the PeerDAS devnets.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Minhyuk from Sunnyside Labs, and we are currently working on helping PeerDAS ship faster by running quick iterations of devnets with higher block counts, like 72. So we're currently mostly working with the consensus client teams in identifying potential bottlenecks. But as PeerDAS's spec expands into the execution layer, I think there will be more to test in the EL side as well. So I've left the links to the reports of the test we did in the past few weeks in the execution dev Discord. So I'd really appreciate it if the EL teams could take a look at it and see if there are any other tests or analysis that we could do on the EL side as well. So like few things already came up, such as like we were testing with the large number of blobs, like 50 blobs per block with Pectra and PeerDAS, and we saw some limitations in the TX pool size. So I mean, we could manually increase the default TX pool size of the clients to maintain a good hit rate in the get blobs. But maybe if we aim to scale this to the higher blob counts in Fusaka, we might want to consider like different approaches to the blob pools. So like this is one of the many discussions to come, but I just wanted to highlight here and ask for some feedback and comments in the relation to high blob performances across the EL frontier and what we could do to help things ship faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, any questions, concerns? If not, then I think the main EL thing we should probably touch on a bit is the cell-proof computation. But okay, Francesco has an actual question. Get has a very large transaction pool size. Do you think the size is a problem or the prioritization logic?
We didn't see the problem with Get, or we saw the issue in other clients, but I think it could be the size problem since like we are increasing the block counts by the factors of 10. So yeah.
So maybe a quick comment from my side on this, since Get has a disk-based transaction pool for the blobs. It's like there isn't really a limit to it. At the same time, it does require some like SSD space. So this is just something to keep in mind, is that we are not bounded by the amount of main memory for our blob pool, which is why we are able to run it with much higher limits than the other client. And also it is not a shared limit with other transactions, since it is a dedicated pool for blob transactions only.
Yeah, for Nethermind, we are saving blob transactions to this as well, and we are limiting it by number of transactions. So by default, it's 16,000 of blob transactions. So actually, our disk space will be growing when there will be more blobs in transactions. So if we will not limit max number of blobs per transactions, we will just need to decrease a bit our max amount of transactions in block pool. But generally, it's we are sending it to disk, so it should there will be no memory problem at all.
Okay. Any other questions on this? If not, the other part of the EL pure aspect that we should discuss is the cell-proof computation. I don't know who's the right person to give an update on this. Alex?
Yeah, hey. So I linked two PRs here. I think most people know the topic. There's a migration of the solve proofs, which is a slightly new type of proof in PureDAS that we have. There's been the idea to move this to the EL from the CL. We think it will help with performance. And yeah, I think there is a lot of good progress on the PureDAS breakout this week. I was not able to make it. If someone's here and wants to give an update, that would be useful. But either way, I'd like to merge these two as quickly as possible. So do we feel like we're in a place to do that? Are there any final questions or comments people have?
So I think one of the main updates from the breakout was we pretty much agreed that we should have this version byte that Felix suggested. So I think unless someone wants to speak now, that should be like a final decision, because we kind of we've been talking about this for a while, and really that seemed to be the consensus on the call.
Is that in the specs already, in these PRs?
It's in the EIP, yeah.
Okay.
Just to double check, this would go into the execution payload header and the execution payload, right? The version byte.
So this version byte would only be in the wrapper of the blob transaction that is transmitted over the network. So that was basically the idea, because that is the only place where we actually have the proof. So the versioning there is the versioning of the proof and not the versioning of the transaction.
So it doesn't go in the header.
No, there's no header changes or anything. This is purely like a networking change in some
Okay,
ways.
perfect. Yep, that's good.
Okay. I can take a look at these PRs later today, and I will bias towards merging them soon.
Sweet. Any other questions, thoughts? Okay. Then moving on, okay, for EOF. So there's been a lot of conversations about EOF this past few weeks. Some concerns around the complexity of EOF, which were as well articulated in the shared blog post that I had in the chat. There was another proposal made by Light Clients to bring some of the functionality of EOF in more piecemeal size, and then Epsilon team also put together a doc explaining like what are the different flavors of EOF that we can move forward with if we are to stick to this. Yeah, I asked if teams could share their positions or views in advance of the call. Most of them have, so thank you for this. And a high level summarizing, on the get side, Light Client was the person who proposed the EOF alternative and one of the authors of the post with the complexity concerns. But then Felix said that he personally supports one of the options of EOF, so option D. Besu seems to generally support EOF, but also had some uncertainty with regards to which version of it. So there's option A or C from the blog post that they seem to preferred. And then Aragon, Nethermind, and Reth each had posts out saying that they support EOF, but those came out, I think, before the blog post with the specific different options. So none of them kind of supported this. or none of them, sorry, kind of specified which subversion they wanted to have. Solidity also put out a blog post saying that they support EOF and kind of went into the list of like why they like each features rather than stick it to an option. And then Vitalik had an agenda comment saying that he would be fine with either having these piecemeal options or like maybe some more minimal version of EOF. I guess at a high level, it seems like there's pretty broad support for EOF still, despite kind of these issues raised around complexity. But maybe I'll start here. Like, does anyone feel like that's not the case, and that we should somehow reconsider all of EOF in light of this? Okay, then assuming we do want to move forward with this, the question is, which version should we move forward with, and how? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Ansgar, you have a comment? I'm not quite sure I got it.
Which comment? No, I was just trying
sorry.
to. I mean, I did not speak to Vitalik about this topic. I
Okay.
just I was just saying. I think
Oh,
my
sorry.
understanding is. Oh, did you mean the other comment?
Oh yeah. Like unspecified should mean support for the full version, right?
I was just saying because you said there's a few clients that didn't specify the option, and
Yeah.
so the Solidity is as well. And I think unless expressly stated otherwise, given that the full version was the only one proposed at that time, I think that should be by default interpreted as support for only the full version.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And then I think it seems like like Felix's post actually opposed this. So and that seems to be the main second point is, do we actually want to ban code introspection? And yeah, at least Felix was
I can give
raised some concerns. Yeah.
I can give my 2 cents on this. So I mean, I'm not per se like, I mean, I understand that like some of the benefits of UF, which I also learned a lot about from Solidity's post today. Some of the benefits actually come from having this in. For example, this idea of being able to transpile the contracts, like basically without keeping their original code. This is something that I can understand. Like the fewer features the EVM has, the easier it is to make it work. And my main concern is just that basically just knowing that people do all kinds of stuff. I feel like it's pretty strange, for example, to remove the gas introspection because it's something that exists right now and it is pretty heavily used. So creating a new model where it's not possible is just something that is gonna raise some issues. And I'm not sure. I mean, this is also something that was raised by, I forgot the name of the person, but there was this thing discovered pretty much, I guess, last week or the week before, where just not having the gas introspection, for example, can lead to a situation where all of a sudden, without some extra precaution, there is the problem that even simple transfer operations can all of a sudden lead to an arbitrary execution that wasn't really possible before. And in general, I do feel like it's a pretty cool feature in the EVM to be able to constrain the gas of a sub call, and just not having that, I guess it's maybe tangential to UF, but there's just a bunch of things where I feel like it's somehow simpler to not do these changes to the model of the EVM and just only focus on the encoding of the bytecode, some of like cleaning up some of the basic access to the stack and the memory and the jumps and so on, but leaving the fundamental feature set of the EVM kind of the same. Whereas with this, the proposed changes of removing code introspection, removing gas introspection, it really cuts like a lot of things out of the model that exists right now. So basically, and then the other reason why I said it might be good not to remove these things is just because, I feel like it would somehow simplify EOF still. Like it is compromised in some ways. Like some things that EOF proponents really want will not be possible if we have code introspection, or at least they will have to somehow emulate it in some way, or like it has to be evaluated. But what it actually means to have EOF with these features in place, and probably someone has already done this analysis and I'm just not aware of it. But kind of what I think is that if we don't focus on removing these particular parts of the EVM, then it will be a simpler change in the end, because it doesn't remove so much from the VM. And yeah, that's kind of why I put this. But I mean, if I would just really prefer to like see some kind of analysis where someone has, I feel like this option of like having EOF with the introspection is kind of a new one also. That's not like, it was even listed in that document as being like a very recent addition. So.
Got it. Thank you. There's a couple other hands up. Ben?
Yeah, so the pay up code, which is slated for DevNet 2, fixes the transfer issue. But just on the gas introspection front, it is kind of problematic because we are considering repricing all the opcodes. So any sort of gas limiting that people put in their contracts will be wrong when we do repricing. Just as an example. For code introspection, there's still like data sections that you can inquire. You can ask the contract about, data. So you can still put data in, you just can't inspect the actual running code.
Got it. Thanks. Ansgar?
Yeah, I just want to say from my point of view, I don't have a strong opinion on like overall is EOF worth the complexity cost or anything, but in terms of just the introspection, I think these have been the kind of result of pretty long, careful design considerations, including things like it's always easy to add things back later, but it's basically possible to remove. So if we ship the version of EOF without removing introspection, then that means that until maybe EOF v3 or something, like in 5 or 10 years, we will just not have any ability to remove introspection at all. Whereas if we ship it without introspection, it turns out that it really, really, really was important and the considerations were wrong about why we don't have it, we can always add it back in a fork in a year or so. So I think the kind of costs of getting this wrong are very asymmetric here. So that I think should, by default, bias is a lot towards keeping the bands in. And then also in addition, this was the kind of the very mature version that we kind of worked on, or like people worked towards for years, whereas like these ideas for like removing the introspection bands came in last second. So for all of these reasons, I personally think that it would be like a very headless decision to now last second kind of change this so fundamentally.
I get it. Maybe one question I have, sorry to interject, is just with regard to the compatibility. Isn't it also that for example, removing code introspection means that I always felt like this is the main reason why, for example, there are these restrictions on calling legacy contracts from within EOF and things like that. Like the only reason not to allow it is to basically because it could be used to sidestep the introspection again. So that these kinds of limitations, I feel they will actively hurt the user experience. Like if there's no real interoperability between the two systems, if they are kind of isolated from each other, I always felt like that part is a bit weird, and we don't really know how that's even going to play out in the app layer, like what that really means. But like, so that would be another reason for me to just say, well, if we just don't have that problem because everything kind of remains the same, then it's somehow easier. But this is more like a gut feel thing. Like I haven't really analyzed this.
Thanks. Charles, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think you maybe apologize if there's background noise, but I think you asked if there's like overall concerns, and I do. By the way, I'm Charles from Viper, and I do think there are some concerns about complexity on my end. I think that we could get a lot of the benefits of UF with like much fewer EIPs, And I know the code and container format has been worked on for a long time, but like even from the compiler implementation perspective, like if you have like EIP 2315 subroutines and static jumps, that already gets you a lot of the benefit of EOF. So I wonder if we can do it in some kind of more stripped down way. Again, I know a lot of work has been done on this, but I don't think it's too late to think about simplifying it.
Right. So I guess at this point there was a proposal by that client, and there was obviously the post. I don't know if you were one of the authors kind of arguing for this. My sense now is client teams have reviewed all this and still feel like some version of EOF is the best path forward. But yeah, if that's not the case, does anyone want to advocate for that or make that point?
I think everyone has reviewed most of the posts, but I will just reiterate again since we need to verbalize some of these things. But there are many risks to doing this. And we, even on much simpler proposals like T-store and T-load have had issues where there are things that we simply did not consider during the design and implementation that ended up becoming problematic. And with T-store and T-load, because it is scoped to the transaction level, it kind of negatively affects how we use 4337 with it, or generally the idea of relaying user operations. So EOF is a much bigger change, and there is almost certainly things that are going to be negatively impacted. And this is, why I have kind of one of the reasons I've been against EOF, but also like one of the reasons that I agree with Felix that if we are to do EOF, then we should probably not go very strong in the direction of banning a lot of behavior that exists today, because we will likely end up in a world where EOF contracts are calling legacy contracts to get around some of the restrictions.
Yeah, so I'm learning this kind of right now, that it is actually it appears to be possible actually to just sidestep these restrictions anyway. Like this is actually not being prevented actively.
You can't code introspect EOF from legacy. It'll tell you it's like 2 bytes.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. No, sorry. Yeah, it has it this way. Yeah, no, I agree. Sorry. I was confused.
Just on the scale of the changes, since the last hard fork, Geth, for instance, has had 1,430 changes with 160,000 lines changed. Nevermind has had about the same scale. EOF is in Geth, it's like 1,000 line change. So, compared to how much goes into a fork, it is a small change. Although, obviously it's in a significant impact there. But I just want people to not underestimate how large the changes between the last hard fork and the next hard fork are.
Yeah, it does. This gives like a proxy, but I think EOF does change an extremely broad surface area of consensus critical code, which is different than, I don't know what Geth did since the last hard fork, but if they added, a bunch of JSON RPC stuff for like, stuff at the edges, obviously that's different than like rewriting the EVM. Yeah, Matthew, you had your hand up, and then Yoav.
I think it's worth saying.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion. I haven't heard anything about MEV. And that's one of those things is EOF does open up a broad surface for additional MEV. And if there's going to be additional
changes, why is that true?
I was talking with Guillaume about this, and the idea that you can precompile all the contracts because there's a lot less of the dynamic jumps, and whatnot, it gives you as a block builder the ability to figure out much quicker how to pack the block because you don't have to do it. You could do it much faster. And I don't know enough about the other changes that are coming into the EOF spec now, and I just wanted to at least bring it up as a CL dev because I don't know how some of the EL stuff works. That someone in research is talking about that, or at least looking at it. What are the implications to some of these new changes that are going to be coming in?
Yeah, I don't think this creates more MEV. I think it might make block building more efficient, and so would it make like verifying transactions. So I would not go down this rabbit hole now. Yeah, Yoav, there was a bunch of comments about the interactions of this and account abstraction.
Yeah, I wanted to reply to Matt's comment about potential issues with compatibility with 47. So first of all, for account abstraction in general, I see things like gas introspection as net positive, at least in the context of validation. We don't really need to have introspection. So EIP 7701 removes the need for having this. But as Matt pointed out, until we have 7701, which will happen hopefully one fork after EOF, we have to continue using 43.7, and the entry point contract does require gas introspection. However, I don't see it as a problem because you can still call entry point as a legacy contract. And to my understanding, it can the accounts themselves, all the other contracts involved can be EOF because you can call into an EOF contract from entry point, which is not an EOF contract. So personally, I don't see an issue with having the full version of EOF from account abstraction perspective.
Okay, so I guess to summarize where we're at, it seems like there's support pretty unanimous for EOF, a pretty broad support for EOF. Gas and code introspection seems like there's moderate support towards removing this. And there was a comment as well in the chat from earlier around like what versions have been tested. And the versions that are currently tested are the ones which do remove all of the introspection. So what if we were to add introspection back in, how big of a change is this? Like, is this something we expect to take a fair bit of work, or is it fairly trivial to do? Yeah, you want to share, Dano?
Okay, so the question of how would we remove them? Option A is complete EOF, and that is the plan of record that we had a few weeks ago on our DevNet plan. So if we get rid of them, there's three approaches we can do, and the main three differences between these three is what happens in the create process, in the create paths. Introspecting EOF is closest to what we have in complete EOF today. All we do here is we expose the existing ban opcodes. So we would just ban, I think, 7 opcodes. We wouldn't ban nearly as many. So we would have the old call opcodes, which would give us full gas utility, and we would allow ext code copy into EOF contracts. However, you would not be able to write an EOF contract from memory. You would still need to use EOF create, a creation transaction, or a TX create coming from an init code transaction if you want to do dynamic creations. So that's what this introspecting EIP preserves. It preserves basically all of complete, except it gives you gas introspection and the read introspection on the code ban code introspection. So we would just ban code writing from memory, which is the more critical piece for JIT compilers. The next one is baseline EOF. That's C. It was the C option. We changed it so that create and create 2 can take either EOF or legacy contracts, and then it switches down one of 2 paths. If you're using init code that is from EOF, then you can only create EOF contracts from that. And if you have a init code that is legacy, you can only create init code. You can only create contracts that is legacy, and it uses the existing EOF create version. The third option which is based off of what we had at Shanghai. I only listed what we had in Shanghai and what was mandatory. All the create and create to, everything would come from memory, whether it's EOF formatted container or whether it's legacy, and the create options would apply to those. And for this minimal option, we could very easily add 6202, 663, 748. It would be easier to just leave them in than to take them out. What really differs between these three is how the create options work. So the introspection is best preserved. The benefits of code introspection are best preserved in introspecting EOF. The code is least changed with baseline, and minimal, we completely and totally would remove the notion of introspection bands.
Okay. So it feels almost weird to like go back to the original version we had, which is like A, but I feel like at this point, the full EOF with the pay opcode seems like the most consensus path forward. Should we do that? Or I feel like either, this is it, then we move forward with it. The other option is like if we agree we want to do EOF and people feel like there's more stuff to discuss, we can finalize the actual spec on the breakout next week. But I think at the very least today, it seems like, there's broad support to stick with EOF. And then, some supports towards like the full version, but I don't know if that needs to be debated some more. Ben?
An important thing to highlight is that EOF doesn't overwrite. It doesn't alias any existing opcodes. So, if in the future it was decided we needed gas introspection, they could be reintroduced. It wouldn't cause a terrible conflict. Removing them would be a problem, because once they're already there, you can't take them out.
That would also be my intuition, that I personally would rather see a version of EOF ship with the bands than one without, because if we realize that we shipped EOF with the bands and that was a mistake, we can always add them in. But if we ship EOF without those bands, we have something that's very close to the EVM already, and then no opportunity to like change that in the future. Ansgar?
Yeah, one last question just on process here. Do we want to are we making a final decision on EOF today? Or I know that there was like a lot of the opposition to EOF in general came from people that are not super close to the ACD process. So I'm just wondering if it's worth basically saying, okay, we basically A plus pay is the version we want to go with. Preliminary decision, we basically confirm this in 2 weeks, unless there's like some strong push basically by people or something, then we revisit, or are we just making the call today?
I think we should make the call today. I think that like the post that was written around the complexity objections was extremely good and well articulated and thorough. And at least I don't know, for the past few years I followed EOF, like I haven't seen other objections than what was put into this post. So I don't know that we'll get much more signal by like doing another round of feedback. And I think, I think we kind of have all the data. I'm fine saying if people feel like we need like a few more days to decide on the specific like configuration of EOF, that might be reasonable. But at the very least, agreeing that we broadly include EOF seems to make sense. And I think we can maybe get more than that if we have consensus that we want to keep the introspection bands and add the pay opcode. Felix.
So just to mention something, in general, our process is structured as such that even if we fully commit to shipping EOF option A today, if a breaking incompatibility or security related issue is discovered in the proposal, it will be retracted or the issue has to be fixed. So I feel like it's very valuable today to agree on something, because whatever we decide, if there is something that means we cannot do it, it won't get done anyways. It's not like we have to do it then. It's just, this has happened before. Like we have decided on something and then we had to pull it later because some last minute thing was discovered. So
yeah. So I think obviously if we find some critical security issue, like that's always the case. But I do think, barring that, we should no longer revisit this decision once we make it. Ansgar?
Yeah, one last point. Just also as we start moving to talking about the other features for Fusaka, either today or like in 2 weeks, I still maintain, and I think it's good. It would be good if we could affirm this, or at least affirm this in 2 weeks. That I still think that the biggest priority by far of Fusaka is PIRDAS. So I would stick with the plan that we ship Fusaka the moment PIRDAS is ready. And basically stable. And that means that if, for example, EOF for some reason does take longer in actually like working out all the kinks, and people are not comfortable with the readiness of EOF by the time that PIRDAS is ready, I would still prefer, or any other feature that we might end up adding, I would still very strongly prefer if we basically are okay with just leaving any features behind that just can't make it in time, because I really think like PIRDAS is the main feature for this year.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And especially because this fork is pretty isolated. Yeah. Okay, and I guess before we move on from the topic, the author of the complexity post, I'm not sure what your actual name is, but like P. Kavasakyo, sorry if I butchered your name, is on. Do you want to give maybe like some background on your perspective here? And Pascal, your perspective on EOF and like what got you to write the post and the concerns.
Sure. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I mean, I'm coming mostly from the application side, and I saw that you would like to get EOF included, and I started reading about it, and it took me a lot of time to understand what's going on. And this is a huge concern to me, because if it's so complex and it takes so much time to understand such a huge upgrade, you can't expect the community to give feedback. And about the community, meaning on the application side, we had, for instance, for T-Store or T-Load, we had enough people from the application side who actually try to contribute. But the complexity of EOF in itself, the package overall, it takes so much knowledge, background knowledge, and time to understand the scope of it. And this is a huge concern to me personally. And that's why I started actually advocating against it, because even right now, if I look into TX Create PRs, it takes 3 hours or to understand what's going on for me and to try to provide feedback, right? And there's some sort of disconnect between the core layer, people really understand what they're building, and on the execution layer, and on the application side right now for this specific upgrade. And that's, I mean, I'm against EOF. I can say it here. I mean, it doesn't mean that my opinion counts at all, but I'm really against EOF even at this point in time. And that's what I want to say.
Thanks. Yeah, and I will say, look, I appreciate the time you've spent writing this. I've said this, I think maybe right before you joined, but it feels like the objections and concerns were very well articulated. My sense now is people have reviewed this and still feel like it is the right path forward. These are complex changes to review. One thing I will note is, the people working on it have been thinking about this for the better part of 5 years. And yes, there is complexity in EOF, but it's also kind of the result of a long iterative process. Yeah, it is something we should consider, but we should push back. We shouldn't decide to not do something just because there is complexity in it. Yeah, I don't think it came across as disrespectful or anything. So I appreciate, yeah, the raising the concern. To move this forward practically, I guess one question I had in the chat is if we went with option A, which seems to be the favored one at this point, and we added the pay opcode, which seems like we have to, what would be the diff with what we already have in the meta EIP? Is there, does someone have it like off the top of their heads or?
So what's scheduled for inclusion does not include EIP 7761, EIP 7880. And those are what I call symbolic introspection, which have been requests that came in last year from like EIP 720 developers for NFTs. And those address those. And also Open Zeppelin had some concerns about safe proxies and the delegates, and the type and address those. So those would need to be moved in. And pay opcode, I think, falls in the same bucket. It's not symbolic introspection, but it solves important findings that were brought forth by the community. And also one request from Sourcify 7834. And these were all listed in the testnet plan that I presented over a month ago. These are mostly DevNet 2 features. And the way it's structured is DevNet 1 has all the backwards incompatible features, and stuff in DevNet 2 is forward compatible if we run out of time. And PeerDAS is ready on the 1st of June. We could cut with what we have and drop DevNet 2 if we had to. So the design of the DevNet is we could cut it if we need to. And I think, you know, on a different unrelated tangent, that might be a model we might want to go for forks in the future. Is just because your schedule doesn't mean you're going to go in, because it might get cut because it's time to ship. And that just means you have a priority position for the fork after. That only works if we do faster forks. So separate discussion.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of a practical next step here, I feel like we should schedule for inclusion the EIPs we want in the next EOF DevNet, and then CFI the other ones that are part of option A and including pay. Could you open a PR against me? I want to make sure we get this right. I know there's a lot of EOF EIPs, but can you open a PR against the meta EIP to do that, where we SFI the ones that would be in the next EOF DevNet, COFI the ones that would be in the ones after that, and then we can make a call to add them progressively based on how PeerDAS evolves?
Yeah, I will do that before lunch.
Okay, thank you very much. So a high level, the decision would be move forward with option A for EOF, include the pay opcode change, and then break this down into manageable chunks for the DevNet implementation, so that we're not holding all of PeerDAS if that is ready, and EOF is at DevNet 1 instead of DevNet 2. Does that sound reasonable? Any final comments, objections? Okay. Yeah, thanks everyone. I think, yeah, I'm pretty happy we finally got to a decision on this. Yeah, and we can move forward. On the Fusaka front more broadly, so teams are like expected to share their preferences for all of the scope of the fork next week. We wanted to make sure that we got like the big fundamental pieces locked in first. So that's EOF and PeerDAS. Some teams have already put out blog posts. It seems like the only EIP that came up in all of those posts was raising the gas costs for mod EXP. Geth is the only EL team that doesn't have a blog post out yet. But I think if we wanted to take one more decision today, I would consider CFIing this EIP about raising the mod XP gas costs. Also fine waiting to next week if people want to have a call where we actually go through like all of the different proposed EIPs and only make decisions then. And yeah, if we wanted the CFI, the mod XP repricing, I would just sanity check with guests that they're also okay with it.
I mean, yeah, I can give the statement right here that I think like scoping it with EOF and the couple other small changes that were proposed is totally fine for us. This is literally also how we see it. It's mostly the issue just we don't really have a blog to post it on. So I guess we would be putting out a statement somewhere, but basically we agree with the positions that are put forth by everyone else.
Okay, so I'll move the CFI. I'll move the CFI one to I'll move the mod XP repricing, which is EIP 7883 to CFI, and we can discuss all the other EIPs on the next call. But that one was just unanimously stated, so it's kind of a no-brainer. And yeah, well, we actually have 20 minutes to talk about the other topics, so I think we should move on. Anything else on Fusaka before we wrap up? Yeah, POTUS? We can't hear you, POTUS, if you're speaking. Okay, Charles?
I know it's a late change, but it's a small one. I'd like to propose EIP 7903 and 7907 for increasing code size limits.
What is the EIP, sorry? 7903?
7903 and 7907.
Okay,
one is for init code,
I think
and
yeah,
one is for win code.
Yeah, so you already had those on the meta EIP. So the plan now is teams will review this list of PFI EIPs over the next 2 weeks, and we can discuss that on the next call. So I'll post the link here in the chat, but there's a bunch that have been proposed, and in addition, to the list I just posted, there were 2 more whose PRs couldn't be merged for some random bot issues. I had those in the agenda. But the expectation now is that given we know we're moving forward with EOF and PeerDAS, yeah, in the next 2 weeks, we can finalize the scope for everything else. Yeah, POTUS? Oh, sorry.
I think I probably fixed it.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm not sure if it's for this call or the next one or the very next one, but I'd love to have a discussion about, not about which EIP goes or which EIP doesn't go, but about timing of forks, whether or not we want to prioritize scoping for time or scoping for content. And I think this discussion should be held before agreeing on what Fusaka is going to be. And if you want, I can give you an argument, or otherwise we could just defer the discussion for whatever it goes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for Fusaka specifically, it seems clear to me that every single team, or at least every single team I've spoken with, says they want PeerDAS by the end of the year. And that should be our baseline starting point. We literally just talked about this with how would we handle EOF if PeerDAS is ready before. So I think we should probably make this more explicit in general and moving forward. But for Pectra for Fusaka specifically, I think it's shared by every single team to get PeerDAS live before the end of the year or before Dev Connect. But if a team doesn't feel that way, I think they should make that clear. But I don't think there is one as far as I can tell. This doesn't mean we add nothing else to the fork, but I think it means we should weight that against the shipping date, and it also means that we should be willing to remove stuff if it blocks PeerDAS shipping earlier. And sorry, one more thing. So there's a comment about the R1 curve in the chat. I think the way we should proceed for the EL side, or the EL on the CL, it seems like there's one big feature to ship, and that's pretty much it. On the EL, there's EOF, but there's also a bunch of small features. my proposal there would be we only SFI stuff when we're ready to implement them. So say that like now we all agreed EOF plus the mod XP, or sorry, EOF was like SFI'd, and we've like CFI'd this mod XP repricing. Maybe we CFI the R1 curve. We only move those into the fork when like everything else is ready, and then we can make a call. Like if we can only implement one more thing, do we do mod XP? Do we do the R1 curve? Or whatever. But like. And yeah, sorry, the R1 curve is already CFI'd. So when we move, basically moving things from CFI to SFI should mean that we are putting it in the next DevNet, and we don't think it's going to significantly delay the fork. So for now, what we would have SFI'd is EOF, PeerDAS. Let's focus on implementing those, and then see how close we are to shipping PeerDAS. Sorry, long-winded way of saying, for Fusaka specifically, we should aim to ship before the end of the year. Anything else on Fusaka? Okay. On the history, expiry, and portal side, there were a few things to discuss. The first was this issue around the interaction of history expiry and the deposit logs. Alex, you'd put something about this in the chat.
Yeah, so there was a summary in the comment on the issue for today's call. Essentially, given the way that 6110, which changes how deposits process, how clients today get the history for the deposit contract processing, there's a bit of a dependency here with history expiry. And from last week's call, we decided to wait for Pectra before moving ahead with history expiry. So yeah, I think because of that, we said move ahead with doing this on Sepolia, both to test, and then also, again, the fact that Pectra is live there, we have this dependency resolved already. And yeah, I think just because of that, then there would be an update to timelines for history expiry. And I think that was essentially the context.
Yeah, Mikhail?
I just want to add a bit on that. I think we should be, before doing the expiry, we should be sure that all CL clients can actually sync a node from scratch without depending on historical deposits. So after the 6110 activation, there will be a period of deprecating the previous mechanism. And after that, CL clients will be able to completely wipe it out from their code bases. I don't know how all CL clients are designed around this feature, but in the past, if I'm not mistaken, some of them were requiring syncing deposits before they could start, for instance, to serve validator clients. So just want to bring this up for us, for us not to forget about this. And I think testing with Sepolia is important to show this. And probably it also will require infrastructure, node operators to actually, I don't know, maybe be aware of this, that for bootstrapping a new node, they will need to use the new software. Yeah, so from scratch means that you start syncing with the empty database.
But I mean, I assume that you mean just checkpoint sync and backfill back down to Genesis or something like this, or the week judges subjectivity period or whatever, but you don't really mean syncing from Genesis. Okay.
Are there actual CL clients today that are not ready for this? I'm just curious. I haven't been able to get an answer to that yet.
I think you're asking if clients are ready for Pectra, and they are. So it should be good on that front.
No, what I mean
the question is whether or not if it's
clients,
removed.
Are there CL clients today that would have a problem if history was tried? Are there CL clients today that if those logs were not available from their execution client, that they would have a problem?
Before the Pectra upgrade, a lot of CL clients, like if you don't have a deposit snapshot, still rely on the logs to sync to the deposit contract. But while many of them have implemented it, sometimes some of the tooling around syncing doesn't support it. So like it's a fallback basically for now until the fork goes live.
Cool. And so I see Prism listed as potentially one that has a dependency on this.
I don't think Prism has an issue past the period, the 6110 period. I mean, there are cosmetic messages, but we should work fine if the history is dropped after the transition period after 61100.
Got it. So for Prism's fine as long as the drop happens after Pectra. And that's fine if it's shortly after Pectra?
Well, it's not Pectra, it's after the 6110. I mean, there's a transition period after the fork. And after that transition period, if you drop it after that, then it's fine.
Got it. And reasonably, we expect this transition period to last no longer than?
It depends on the size of the deposit queue at the time of the fork. So it's kind of hard to say, but we can look closer to the mainnet date and we can get a better estimate.
Sure, but just like ballparking it so that people have are we talking about 6 weeks? Do we need 6 months? Do we need 2 months? Do we need 8 days?
I think more like weeks, but I think more like weeks or days even, but it depends. Like if someone comes in and makes like a bunch of deposits right before the fork.
But we could set a target date of 4 weeks after the fork, and that we would be in a high confidence of hitting.
Seems fine, but again, I think like we'd have a much more high confidence estimate right near the fork.
Is it too hard to drop it on Sepolia or to drop it on Hoodie and chain and all these chains that already have merged, that have forked?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Like, I don't see why we would not run this test through our standard process, especially considering that in the past month, everything we've put on the testnet has had issues. So I was
under the it was my understanding that we had come to some agreement that we were going to do Sepolia drop on May 1st. That's one of the other topics for today.
Okay, so
I was going to say the suggestion then is just focus on Sepolia, and then once we do that, then we can think about mainnet. Although I think Piper's asking if we could go ahead and have some mainnet estimation right now. But everyone's suggesting we just wait on mainnet.
I think it is a silly idea to just say that we're going to wait on mainnet. If we expect it only to take a short time after mainnet, then I think it is important for clients to have an expectation that the plan is that shortly after Pectra goes live on mainnet, that their clients are ready to do the drop there as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, but yeah, we don't necessarily need to have a specific date set yet. We should have a date for Sepolia, and if client teams are, are fine with that, we can see how Sepolia goes, analyze it, set a mainnet date after. I don't see a major reason why we would want a mainnet date set before we know if Sepolia worked. And there was Barnabas has a comment in the chat saying like, can we do this before the mainnet Pectra fork? Like, is there a reason to wait till May 1st for Sepolia aside from everyone being busy right now?
I think the main thing for Sepolia is EL clients having a release ready that is able to drop the pre-merge Sepolia history at that time. How much time do EL clients need for that? Also, we need ETH69 finalized before that as well, if I have this correctly sorted in my head.
As far as I understand, there is no real need to finalize the ETH69 before we drop the history. It's just something that is an optional extra kind of. So Also,
Could you not just drop it now on Sepolia, like starting from today? Whoever is ready can drop it and call it a day. You don't need to like
well,
butcher
yeah,
it.
I guess so, but we're not. So in terms of Geth, for example, we are still very much working on the implementation of it, and we were kind of like working towards that May 1st date. So I would like to see that, you know, we have a bit of extra time to actually finish our implementation of it. It's not entirely trivial in the client. I mean, yeah, for some clients it's easier because they kind of already had this, but we didn't, and we are still actively working on making sure the client is fully working with some of the blocks removed. And
My question is,
yeah.
could other clients not drop it though? Like starting now in only on Sepolia. I'm not talking with Mainnet. I'm only
Yeah, I
talking about
mean, we can't really prevent them to, no? I mean, it's literally the status quo as far as I understand. So it's not something that I don't think we can forbid it in some way. I mean, the main impact this is going to have is just it's going to make it a bit harder to sync these blocks. But as long as it doesn't become impossible, it's fine. The main thing with why we wanted to agree on a date is because it actually may become impossible after this. Because if everyone drops it, they're just gone. And then we would have to somehow put them back in, which is not super easy. So that was the main reason why we wanted to agree on this date. I mean, if we're now going to just go with whatever date, it's also fine, as long as we're reasonably confident there will be some nodes that are still kind of serving it for those who really do want to sync it now.
Okay, so we only have 3 minutes left. Like, is Sepolia May 1st the thing we've agreed to? And in the chat, people seem to say we're on the same page about this. Like, should that be the latest date for everyone? If we need to hash this out more than agreeing to May 1st, I feel like we should move this to a separate call or a separate discussion forum. I'm not sure what the best place is, though.
There's no strong objections to May 1st. Let's say that it's May 1st today, and we can confirm this over the next week asynchronously.
Okay, and where should we document this? Like, it feels like it would be nice to have something more than just all Codev Zoom chat to like keep track of the overall plan for how we deploy history expiry. I don't know if we want to update the EIP with this information or have some like meta EIP or some other spot, but yeah, it would be because infrastructure providers, like it's not just client teams that need to coordinate on this. There are like the users of the nodes, and it would be good to be able to inform them of what the what the plan is. And yeah, maybe it should be just an informational EIP that's added to the Fusaka meta. But somewhere with this information would be nice. Yeah, Piper, can you take the lead on this? Okay, thank you. We only have 2 minutes left. There were like 3 other topics around portal and history expiry, 869, light client and portal issues. I don't think we have sufficient time to cover those, but does anyone want to give a quick shout or share where people can discuss this? Okay, if not, then I could take the last minute. Barnaby and Ansgar are launching a protocol research call. Do you guys want to give a quick overview about what this is?
Yeah, I can do that quickly. Thank you for the airtime. So we're launching this experimental call, protocol research call, next week, Wednesday at ETH o'clock. The idea of this call is to try and address the why of some of the big questions that Ethereum faces. And we hope that it's a place to bridge research, core development, and the larger community of builders and users as well. So yeah, the first call will be on what we want from our nodes on the network. We'll talk about questions like local building, the validator set. Yeah, I see Ansgar has dropped a link to the announcement. So yeah, we hope to see as many people there as possible.
Nice, thank you. And with that, we're at time. There's one last non-urgent thing that was on the agenda. Andrew brought up that we need to start thinking of a Sepolia replacement for a year or so from now, and we need a name for it. So if you want to discuss potential name, you can do so on East Magicians. And with that, we actually covered everything that was on the agenda. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll make a small PR to the Meta EIP to add the mod XP precompile. We'll wait on Daniel for the larger PR for the EOF changes. And then, yeah, on next week's CL call and the EL call the week after that, we can finalize the specs for Fusaka. But yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.